Welcome to Face Islam, the program dealing with the issues, subjects, and topics facing Muslims everywhere, every day. In this episode, I want to talk about a word, Taqleed. Taqleed. I'm overemphasizing it to help you understand what the sounds are in Arabic language. But it usually implies following something without even considering why you do it, or blind following. Just do it because everybody else is doing it. I want to begin by mentioning something I heard when I was a boy. My mother would say, just because everybody else jumps off a cliff, are you going to jump off a cliff? Just because everybody else sticks their hand in a fire, are you going to stick your hand in the fire? No. So in the same way, we as Muslims should look closely to what we do. Oftentimes, when we hear from non-Muslims blaming Islam for things that Muslims do, if we examine closely and look into the matter, we find that the case is the Muslims were not really following Islam. They were blindly following something else. Maybe they thought it was Islam, or maybe they didn't even bother to think. But this kind of blind following is condemned and is condemnable by Islam, by Allah, and certainly not something that is appropriate for a Muslim to do. Even before Islam came, there were people who were in a state of jahiliyyah, and we mentioned that in another program. They were ignorant. But the worst kind of ignorance is when the offer is coming to you for knowledge, and you choose to accept a blind following pattern rather than to examine the knowledge being offered. Let's consider. Somebody is doing the same routine every day, every day, every day, and they're going nowhere. They just keep making the same mistakes. Someone comes to them and says, excuse me, if you just change this and do that and do this, then everything will work. And he says, no, I have to do this. Why? Because this is what my father did, this is what his father did, and that's what his father did. You say, okay, but even though they made the same mistakes and had the same results, he said, never mind, I just want to do what they did. That's Taqleed. Let's consider something. I'm going to tell you a little story. They said there was a time years ago in New York when there was a policeman who went to the High Commissioner's desk one day and hit his hands on his desk, and he said, I want to ask a question. The High Commissioner, Police Commissioner, he said, what is your question? He said, I want to know why, after 20 years' experience, you still have me as just a patrol policeman, what they call a beat. He's walking a beat. Why am I still walking a beat after 20 years? He says, and I trained you. 20 years ago, you walked the beat with me, and look, you're the High Commissioner. Why haven't I been promoted? And by the way, the captain here, this captain, he also trained with me about 18 years ago. He's the captain now. How come I'm still in this level and I have 20 years experience? Oh, wait, and this sergeant and this corporal, all of these guys over me now, they trained with me. I walked the beat. I have 20 years experience, and yet I'm still doing the same thing that I did 20 years ago. Why? The police commissioner looked at him. He said, are you through? He said, yeah. He said, okay, you don't have 20 years experience. He said, what? I have, you know, I can prove it right here. I have 20 years. You ought to know because you were there. And I taught you, and I taught him, and I taught him. And I have... He said, stop. You have 20 years on the force, but you don't have 20 years experience. What? He said, that's right. You actually have 1 year experience 20 times. You're still making the same mistakes today that you were making 20 years ago. You have 1 year experience 20 times. Now, this is told as a story, as a joke in a way, but it makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Am I really learning anything? Am I really advancing? Am I getting better in what I do in my worship? Am I getting any better in what I do in my daily work? How about my relation with other people? Am I making the same exact mistakes over and over and over? Because if I'm doing so, without even bothering to think why, this is a form of taqleed, blind following, without considering how to come closer to achieving my goals. And in Islam, there's another downside to taqleed. Very often, when we blindly follow, we do not catch the good that people are doing. We won't reach the level of the good they do, but at the same time, we'll exceed past the bad things that they did. So we'll literally become worse generation after generation after generation. The way to become better is to be able to understand what it is you're really doing, why you're doing it, and how to improve the way you do it. For us as Muslims, we have two sources, and we know the two sources. Nobody has to tell us that. We have Quran, which is the speech of Allah to us in the Arabic language. We have Hadith from the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those Hadith, along with the Quran, show us, explain to us, and put us in a position to better our condition every day. Oftentimes we hear people say, well, you have to be in this group, you have to be in that group, or this group, or that group. Just get in that group and then blindly do whatever they tell you to do. Don't even think. Don't use your mind. Don't argue. Just do it. Without thinking. Again, look what will happen. Any good that these leaders are doing, you will not reach. But any bad that they did, you will exceed it. This is the normal way of a human being. And we want to be careful about that, because blindly following is the opposite of the knowledge of Islam. Taqleed is the opposite of real Islam. And that's face Islam.